Hello, welcome to Surface Sessions number 6. And in a change from the usual look at a piece of DAW software, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of a couple of the pen toolbars that I've been working on. The problem is very simple. When you use the Surface Pro 3 as a tablet without the keyboard attached, then you lose access to all of those vital shortcuts that you use in creative software. When using the pen or your finger in desktop software, basic tasks such as copy and paste can become a major operation. Even with the keyboard attached and using the pen, you tend to sort of lean into the screen, and so getting your fingers then on the keys can be quite awkward to your workflow. The answer lies in having some kind of customizable toolbar that's pen and finger friendly and can be used to send commands to your software. Obviously you could use the on-screen keyboard, but that tends to take up half of your screen, and so you can't really see what you're doing. It would be awesome if this built-in keyboard was more customizable so that you can change keys around or create a customized version of that, but alas, as far as I can tell, that's not possible. So I found two ways of achieving this. One through MIDI and another one through simple keyboard shortcuts. They both have their pros and cons. So let me show them to you and then you can decide which one would work best for you. Smithson Martin's Emulator Pro is an awesome virtual multi-touch MIDI controller. You can combine faders, knobs, buttons and other things to design whatever controller you want. Comes with its own internal MIDI driver, so you can route it directly from the virtual software into your DAW, just like you would with a hardware controller. Each control is assigned a MIDI channel number and a controller number, and it's mapped directly in. Easy. I'll be doing a full review of the latest version, which is 1.5, as soon as it's officially out. It's not quite out yet, so I'm using a beta version, so if anything weird happens, it's really not my fault, it's because it's a beta version. You can't use version 1.4 because it doesn't cope with the desktop scaling and it all comes out looking a bit weird, so you have to use 1.5, but that should be out any time. Now, Cubase perhaps has a unique ability to map MIDI controls to absolutely any command or any parameter. So not just fader movements or mute buttons or that kind of thing, but to cut, copy and paste to anything that's under one of these menus can be controlled via MIDI, which is amazing. I don't know of any other software that does that. There probably are others, but I can't think of them. So if there are, that's great. Let me know in the comments below, and that would be great to know, because that we could use Emulator with more stuff. But at the moment, the Emulator Cubase connection for this is a little bit unique. So let's get inside, get a bit closer, and let me show you how I created my button toolbar at the side and how it integrates with Cubase. So our glorious toolbar down the side, let's bring up the editor so we can see what's going on. What I'll do is I'll just load up a slightly earlier template. There we go. So we can block out Cubase for a minute. So Emulator opens up as a full sort of blank page, sort of an abyss, if you like, of control where there's nothing on it at all. Some of the cool things about 1.5 is the grid, which now lets you lay out things much simpler. But just to give you an idea, a very quick idea of what Emulator is, it's a bunch of knobs and sliders. I can put a slider on there, make it nice and big. I can get a knob, stick that on there, make that nice and big. If I go into the right mode, I can then move that around with my finger, with the knob. Similarly, I can move that around. So those are the sort of controls I can create very easily with Emulator. But the other thing that it allows you to do is create buttons to turn things on and off. Let's get out of that, let's go into that, let's get rid of that. And this fella here. So what I've done is created a button, bring that across. I can make the button any size I like. I've made them nice and neat down the side here, but let's make this one bigger. Let's also make it red, just for fun. Over here I've got the parameters box, and this gives me the MIDI out parameters like MIDI channel, MIDI note number, etc, etc. So let's stick a number in here, let's say 75. Just for fun. Try to pick a number that's not generally used, like 7 is used for volume, things like that. so you're not going to automatically clash with something. Let's call it, we're going to call this mute, like so. You can also rotate buttons and things like that, but I'm not going to get into any of that. You can also make things slightly transparent. Blah blah blah. I will not get distracted into doing this. I want to just show you how this works with Cubase. Okay, so I've created my button. I'm going to stick this button over here, like so. Now, the first thing you'll also notice is that you can't actually see Cubase, so how do you get to control it? I have all my buttons, I've got my new button here, but I can't actually control anything yet. So what you do is you have to cut away the area that you're not using this hole shape idea. So I grab hold of one of those, put it to where I want to cut out the hole, like so, and hit subtract. See, there's Cubase underneath. Obviously I've still got this nightmare over here, so I'm going to create this box like that, hit subtract. So I've got my big button over here that I've created all by itself. Big button, big button. Now I want to turn into the mode that's actually going to work. As you can see, as I press it, it's coming on and going off, which is great for the regular mute button on a mixer, but that's actually not what this is for. This is for muting a part, and I just actually want it to toggle. I don't want it to stay on or stay off. I want to trigger that event and then do something else. So I need to turn on, I go back into edit mode, select this one, turn on toggle down here. And now when I go back to try it out, you see it's a toggle button rather than a on then off. Yeah, makes sense? Okay, good. So let's go to Cubase then, and within that what you need is the generic remote, which you'll find under device setup, generic remote. Now it usually has a whole load of stuff already in there to allow you to very quickly and easily connect a hardware controller and map to various events. So it has all the faders and such like mapped out here very, very simply. So you have to scroll all the way to the bottom to add something new. Now I've already got all these mapped at the bottom, but I don't have my new button mapped to anything. So what I'll do is I'll add a new control, which doesn't seem to show up, but it is there just at the bottom. You just have to keep going down a little bit. There it is, there it is. That's my new one. So I'm going to double click that with that, call that mute. It's a controller. Now the address of the controller, we know that it was 70 something, 75, but if I can put on learn here, I can then just tap it and it will pick that up. So it's now learnt that control, which is awesome. Now that's the input. Where that's routed to and what that does is then dealt with in this second window here. I think generic remote is probably invented the same time Cubase was, and it seems to have been there forever, and it seems unchanged forever. It's not really been improved or built upon. I mean, it's extraordinarily powerful, but it's also sort of clumsy and annoying to use. However, once you get under the skin, it can be amazing. So we've got our mute here down the bottom. It's not assigned to anything. Let's assign it to a command. We want it to do a command from the edit menu. So we can find that. Ta-da! And the actual action in that menu, we want it to go to mute. So I want to mute and unmute objects. That's the plan. That's the button that I'm looking for under the edit menu. So I select that, hit apply, hit OK. Now if we select a part, we press our nice big mute button and it's muted it out. Let me show you, click on that and it's muted it out. Muted it out. And I can also unmute it by pressing the same button. Do you see how easy that is? So now this button is mapped to that. And one of the beauties of Emulator, because it's MIDI control, it doesn't matter what the focus is. As I'm doing this, it doesn't matter whether Cubase is actually in the window at all, or I could have something else up in front. Because it's MIDI, it's not bothered by the focus of the window. So that's always going to work, provided that Cubase is actually open. So that in a nutshell is how that works. Let me open up my sort of finished toolbar, which is this one here, and just quickly demonstrate how it works. So I've got on my pencil tool here down the side. I've got select, which is the one up here, pencil, so I can actually create stuff, and erase, so I can rub that out. You'll notice that you can't change it while the pen is very close. It won't let me change while you can see the icon on the screen. I have to pull back far enough and then it will let me change the selection. Do you see that? It won't let me change it while I'm too close, so I have to pull back to do that. Not quite sure what that is about, but there you go. So now I can select, or I can pencil in something else. So I can select a part, make sure I'm on the right track, copy and paste it like so. I can undo that, I can delete it, I can bring up the mixer, I can bring up the editor. So I select something, click on editor, and it'll bring me up whatever editor I'm on. Make that go away. Panel is quite good, it brings up the panel for whatever I've selected. There we go, so it's brought up the panel for the groove agent. Loop, so I select a space and it will loop play around that bit. Stop, play, stop, record. And also I've added a hide button as well. So that's now disappeared into here, and I can bring it back up by clicking on that. The major disadvantage, I suppose, is that I can't move it around. It's kind of stuck where it is. Emulator does allow you to use different pages, so you could set up different pages to have the menu in different places, or to have different menus. So I can have a more comprehensive menu and then swap between pages to have all sorts of controls going on. But if you're not careful, it does get sort of overcomplicated, I think. Whereas if you're using certain commands all the time, that makes it very, very easy to use that. So that's the Emulator Cubase toolbar pen thingy solution. Cool. Let's try the other one. So when I first pointed out this problem back in Surface Sessions number 2, a few people suggested looking at hot keyboard, which I did, but honestly it looked like something that was built for sort of kiosks, and the website really didn't give me any confidence, so it sent me on a search for something a bit more elegant. And then a guy called Surface Pro Artist pointed me in the direction of the Toolbar Creator, a product developed by someone calling himself, well, I still don't know, because I've even asked him his name and he says, oh, the IBIB is his initials, but he won't tell me what his name actually is. So it's Ibby, maybe? Ib? Let's call him Ib. Why not? And anyway, well, what he had done was almost exactly what I was looking for, a completely customizable toolbar that would replicate keyboard shortcuts and, you know, a lot more. It doesn't require any MIDI drivers or mapping or setup like that. It just sets up the shortcuts that you want. So I can use it with anything, which is pretty good. So let me show you how I set that up. I mean, obviously, when I say you can use it with anything, it depends on how generic your commands are. You know, cut, copy and paste, yeah, fair enough, they can be used anywhere. But for other keyboard shortcuts within a piece of software, you have to sort of create those for that piece of software. So I did this one mostly for Reason, because that's what I was using at the time, and that's what I'll demonstrate it with. But let's just have a look at how I created this toolbar and how it integrates with Reason. Cool. So the basic idea is that you create the size of your toolbar and the buttons, and then you allocate each button to a particular task. And at a basic level, these are just keyboard shortcut combinations, but they can also do a load of other things too. Like, for instance, I've got a move button, I've got a hide button. It's sort of smaller and neater than the emulator one, but it lacks perhaps some of the sort of the style, the kind of the Tron-ness of the emulator look. But probably its biggest advantage is being able to move it about very simply like this, and being able to hide it with immense ease. The downside, one of the downsides is that it scales with the desktop. So if you scale the desktop, this also gets bigger and smaller. but you can then resize it later in the options, but it's a bit of a faff, whereas in Emulator, when you resize a desktop, it stays exactly as it was overlaid. You can't build it around corners, so I couldn't put like a row down here and then, or a column here rather, and a row there. It would fill in the space in between, so it just makes one big sort of square or rectangle. It doesn't do different shapes as yet. I mean, that may change. I mean, the guy is constantly updating it and working on it, so who knows what's going to happen around the corner. But it would be quite cool to have a row and a column sort of effect going on in one corner. But you can have more than one instance running at a time, so you could have different toolbars going on, but I haven't really looked into that yet. So let's have a look into how you actually do this. Let's just get rid of reason for a second and move this in. So if we open up the options, which are down here under the toolbar, no, under the tray icon, there we go, toolbar options. There's a lot of stuff in here, an awful lot of stuff, and most of which I haven't even looked at, so I'm not going to go into that in any depth. But in order to create the sort of toolbar that I've used here, you essentially go to design a new toolbar, and here we have our designer. You can then add buttons to that of various sizes and shapes, like so. And once you're happy with your design layout of buttons, you then click save, call it something, and make it the default or whatever. And there it is. Button number 1 is always move to start with, and button number 2 brings up the options. So that's our freshly created pen toolbar. Let's go to the options and see what we can do. So you can alter transparency as much as you like. You can make them bigger. Let's make it a bit bigger for the purpose of this. Some more settings are when is it visible. You can make it visible depending on whether you roll your mouse over it or not, or whether you click or middle click or right click, things like that. Personally, I want it visible all the time is my particular option with all of that. So let's get to the customization, which is where we allocate the commands to the various buttons. So let's pick one like that. This is our button number 1. You can have it as blank and black like that, or you can select an icon. You can create your own icon files for this, but as you can see, there's some that are already made that refer mainly to graphics programs, but it can be whatever you like. So let's choose an arrow. Why not? Stick that there. So that's now become an arrow. Alternatively, if you want to use, select it here, sorry. If you want to use text on it instead, you can type something in there like hello. Oops. So that has a text field rather than an image, and you can choose the color on that. Let's make that white. Okay, and then we're going to up the font size and use that for every button. Aha, nice. Now you can choose what you want it to be. You've got hotkey, hotkey repeat, toggle, time toggle, predefined, and slider button. I don't pretend to know what all of those do, but predefined ones are things like show menu, hide menu, but they've got a lot of stuff in here. Volume up and down. You can toggle control on and off. You can roll the toolbar up or down, which is essentially the hide button. There's lots of Photoshop tools already sort of built in. So there's got some interesting stuff in there. But for what we're going to be using, it's mostly going to be a hotkey. Let's say the hello button, for instance, which is what we're working on at the moment. We're going to call that F3. Bing. So that's kind of as F3. You can also set a right click action, but I've not done that either. So this should, at a touch of a button, bring up search, which is what F3 does. But obviously if you're in another piece of software, then it may do something else. Let's bring up reason again. If I press F3, oh, it's the browser hide, like so. So that's actually highlights a particular thing, which is that it only responds to what's in focus. So this has an effect on what's in focus. Not like in Emulator, because it's tied via MIDI, so it doesn't matter what's in focus. With this, reason has to be in focus for it to be used. If it's not, if I've clicked away, then it's not going to be functioning that. It's now trying to function in here, which actually doesn't do anything. If I put that down and click on the desktop, now it's using this. So that's either an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on which way you look at it, really. And so you allocate the buttons to what you want them to be. And that's sort of really it. There's a lot of other stuff in here, as I say, but I'm not going to go into any of that, because that's the basis of it in order to create our toolbar. So a very quick tour of what this toolbar does. So I've lost my keyboard. There's no keyboard here. I can't copy and paste, for instance, but more simple things like if I want to turn the rack around, I'd have to go up here, I think, edit. Oh, I need to move this out of the way first. File. No, it's not there. Edit. Create. No, it's not there. Options. Toggle. There we go. Toggle front rear. Ta-da! There you go. There's the back of it. Or I can set up a keyboard shortcut and do it like that. Bang, bang. That's easy. Mixer full page, rack full page, sequencer full page, browser on and off. My tools bar thing here, whatever that is. Edit. So if I've selected something, I click on edit and it brings that up straight away, that or audio. Does it? I don't know, maybe I need to have that selected. There we go, that's better. Ta-da! Still learning my way around Reason some of the time. Cut, copy and paste, so I've got that. I can copy it, I can then paste it. That works. I have undo, that works too. I have a duplicate button, which just does the copy and paste thing without any hassle. I can then select different tools. So I've got my select tool, got my pencil tool. Happens like that. Erase, eraser. I have to release, I have to sort of pull the pen off in order to select the next item. So if I have this too close so I can see the icon come up, if I click pencil, that doesn't work. I have to remove it, then click pencil, and now it is pencil. Do you see that? So that's the thing. Zooming in and out. I've got a hand. Something's printing. And stuff like that. So that's how you use that. That's how you use it. Both Emulator and the Toolbar Creator have the potential of providing access to all those vital missing controls when you're using desktop software that's not designed for touch. Emulator, of course, can do so much more with the faders and the knobs and the control and stuff, and perhaps it's better suited to being employed as a virtual multi-touch controller. Or maybe it's a matter of just setting up some pages that you can swap between. I'm going to have to look at that a bit deeper, I think. Emulator is certainly more versatile in layout and design, and the way it sort of glows. It sort of glows in a way that the toolbar doesn't. But also, it's $99. The Toolbar Creator, on the other hand, offers just simplicity, and it's very neat, it's very tidy, and it works with any piece of software you could want. Emulator relies on the host software supporting a depth of MIDI control which is uncommon in DAW software. And as I say, I think it's only Cubase that does that, but I could very well be wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected. Being able to move this around is enormously helpful. I can't do that with this, and is a little frustrating, although I can hide it, which is pretty cool. And more features are being added to the toolbar one at a much faster rate than they are to Emulator, which has kind of struggled along on a similar version for quite some time now, because really the guys at Smith & Martin are kind of out there having DJ parties most of the time, as opposed to working hard on their software. And Toolbar Creator currently is free, although I don't think it should be. So in summary then, Emulator and Toolbar Creator are two vital apps for the Surface Pro 3. If you're working with music on this device, then you'd be an idiot not to have both of them. The Toolbar Creator probably wins out in this scenario simply because it will work with more things. But I'm going to be doing a lot more stuff with the emulator in terms of proper fader and knob type control as time goes on. So yeah, get both. I think you really need both. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Lots more goodies to come. Just, you know, give me time.